You're listening to Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty.
Welcome to the Veeam Partner Perspectives podcast. I'm Eric Doherty. My guest today is Ben Young, Field CTO for the APJ region here at Veeam. Welcome to the show. It's glad to have you here. I know we've been trying to put this together for a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Yeah, time zones make it difficult, right? I'm kind of down the bottom of the world and you're up there.
Yeah, it's already tomorrow, basically, where you are while I'm finishing up my day here.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're only 6 months in here at Veeam, which is nothing, but you have a long history. I mean, a Vanguard 5 different times. So you have a long and successful history of working with Veeam products. So I will never call you new for sure. You might be new to the inside of Veeam and having a Veeam.com address, but you're sure not new. Do you share a little bit about, your background and what your current role is here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, you're right. I mean, I'm new here in that I've got a Veeam.com address, and I'm now engaging more on a day-to-day basis with partners, which is great, and customers and enterprises, and even our field staff, which is fantastic. But yeah, as you say, I've got a long history. I've been using Veeam products for 10, 12 years now. I actually came from a partner myself. So we were a cloud service provider here in New Zealand. Over time, that got consumed by a larger MSP. So I had a MSP focus, but my background's actually in software engineering. So I sort of bring a slightly different lens to even the Vanguard program or Veeam, in that, I don't come from that systems engineer background. And that's how I got to know Veeam and Veeam products. I had to automate them. I had to, wrap a cloud console around VBM 365 and the Veeam backup and replication server to create jobs and deploy tenants. And through that, obviously, grew a great relationship with our friends over in R&D in Europe that make all these products to help drive that and innovate that forward. So leveraging a lot of APIs and things to actually make all this happen. And so in doing that, you go really deep in a product. You often find bugs, which is great, but you learn everything about a product because you need to automate it. And so, that was built up across like I say, probably a good 10-year chunk, using it a few years before that. And then all paths led to kind of me being here. I joined a startup, which was, majority shareholding and was powered by Veeam. So a company called Alcyon last year, we were focused on M365 data protection, and then as a technologist there. And then, that got acquired kind of late last year and brought into the fold. That team's now bolstering our Veeam Data Cloud efforts, bringing a BAS focus to all of our workloads for customers who want it. And as such, I've been lucky enough to land in the strategy team here as a field CTO for the APJ region. So that's kind of a brief history on me.
It's a great history too, and that's really cool. And I'm excited to talk to you about the Alcyon things and what's going on behind the scenes. Because it's just because everything that has to do with AI is not something that you're going to see in a product name or something. So I'm curious to get your take on those things. But AI has just been everywhere. My last podcast episode was about that in general, and it's one of those topics. And I've been reading books, and the same book can sit there and tell you it's the best thing ever and it's the scariest thing ever within the same chapter. But it is everywhere, and it's not just for technology. Everything, I swear, even your refrigerators, touting artificial intelligence and capabilities now. But I wanted to talk today specifically about what Veeam is doing in the world of what we're calling AI today, which it was funny that the gentleman I spoke to on the last podcast said that AI is basically stuff that is not, it's machine-based stuff that's not really part of the normal mainstream yet. Eventually, everything that's AI becomes just mainstream, and you don't think of it as AI. It's not this smart thing. It's just part of the product. But I want to see what we're doing today with some of these things, not only in what's visible and what we're branding in the product that the customer interacts with, but what's going on behind the scenes and what it looks like as we're moving forward.
Yeah, so I think you're right. I mean, I would like to get us to a point where, well, not us, just the industry in general, where AI is invisible. I think it's obviously new and it's exciting and things are changing and we've got models coming at our ears. People, that are training these on supposedly $6 million worth of hardware budgets, et cetera, et cetera. But I'd like to get us to the point where we don't talk about AI. It's just infused in everything that we do, and we interact with it. It makes our lives better. It gives us assistance and things. And so, yeah, when we specifically think, and I certainly don't want to be talking for our CTO and our R&D teams, people like Jorge and Pavel and things who are actually driving this from a technology standpoint within our organization. But I know we think about AI at Veeam in kind of three main pillars. And we can talk about those. We talk about it from a threat intelligence perspective. That's about identifying threats, what's out there. Things like enhanced malware detection models. What could we be doing better either during the backup or maybe even proactively around detecting malware early, knowing if a restore point's going to be, compromised, but then also the world changes. So how can we make sure that we already can go back, for example, with our technology today and re-identify threats, things that weren't, detected during that initial stream, but maybe they now want to recover from a ransomware event and they want to make sure those restore points are clean. How can we use the latest AI models to accelerate that and also kind of be more accurate with detection? Things like unusual sharing patterns, I think that shouldn't be ignored. Like, how could we be looking at potentially data exfiltration? We know from our Coveware acquisition that it's not all about ransomware these days, and these groups now are going for this double extortion type model, where not only will they ransomware or encrypt your data, but they'll also exfiltrate data, because then they know you've got you. People, our customers, partners will be using things like immutable repositories and things, I hope, which is great. That means we can recover from the data. We don't need to be worried about these threat actors now, destroying backup repositories. But if they've got your data, they've pulled data out, that's a different story. We can't protect from that from a mutable repository perspective. And so how could we be looking at exfiltration patterns? We could potentially detect exfiltration from a SaaS-based application, or maybe even within your environment. We already kind of do that today from a Veeam core backup and replication engine on the Veeam data platform, with our tooling that we've got, looking for common tools that may be residing on servers, things like FTP and rclone and other tools on there. We're already looking for those. And so it's about building upon that intelligence piece to make sure that we're trying to detect things before bad things happen, basically. So that's kind of the first one, is that threat intelligence piece that's going to feed into everything we do. We've got a number of workload protections. So how do we make sure that that's consistent across all products? And they can also talk to each other. I think that's equally important. We're going to get lots of different threat signals from SaaS-based applications. We've seen a big move from on-premise to this kind of hybrid world, where we might be running some things up in SaaS land, up in some hyperscalers, and we've still got some things on-premise. So how can we at the core start using signals from all these applications to start making kind of threat intelligence more smarter for us? And then we obviously move down the stack, where we kind of look into that data resilience piece. How can we start classifying data? There's obviously a lot of really clever classification models out and systems that are AI powered now. How could we know what data's where it exists? Is it PII data? Is it health data? And then we can start analyzing, well, that might be violating some rules. You might not be protecting that the way you should be. So how could we start looking at building up resilience with AI? Things like smarter policy management. And again, pulling from signals from all over. Things like user behavior might drive, for example, how data should be protected. If data is being changed more frequently, maybe we should be recommending that we have a more aggressive policy to make sure we're meeting our sort of RPO requirements there. And then things like proactive backups. We've got a number of security vendors that we integrate with already, throughout the VDP platform. So how could we start proactively protecting based on threat signals that people are seeing upstream? Things like firewalls or EDR type endpoints. How can we use those signals to start proactively protecting data rather than being more of a reactive or sort of after after something's potentially happened perspective. So that's kind of the data resilience piece. And there's obviously a lot that can happen in there. The kind of world's our oyster. We protect a lot of workloads today. So we've got, we're in the box seat in terms of being able to control that. Again, from a multi-workload perspective, I think is incredibly powerful. And then I think we move into the operator experience piece, which is really that kind of UX, that user experience side of things, which is where we've started today. So that's that, LLM-based support. But I think we'll see a deeper integration into all of our products. And again, spanning that multi-workload where Veeam Intelligence will spread across multiple workloads, and you'll be able to start asking questions in natural language. But in my opinion, it shouldn't just be proactive. It shouldn't be when something's wrong, the user can ask a question. It'd be great if we were a bit more reactive. So how could we start thinking about that? We could have an LLM, for example, pass log files or error codes or etc., and actually be reactive and say, hey, we've seen this build up. When this happens, this is typically this. And we can pull on external sources, external KB articles, even from the likes of Microsoft, and the example of a M365 backup process. We could be reactive and say, hey, you should change your SharePoint settings because we're seeing this, for example. And then the logical step from that LLM-based sort of support experience is to really go into that AI assistance, that true sort of co-pilot type experience, I think is kind of the general term that the industry's landed on. How could we, with natural language, interact with our systems? And I think that's incredibly powerful. Talking with a backup and replication server with natural language that would then enact a call to an API or actually enact something in the application, create a policy, or even just derive insights. So actually get it to pull data out, real-time information out of your backup and replication server, and actually let you derive insights from that data, and even vast amounts of data. You think about how long it would take a human to analyze hundreds of job logs, whereas an LLM can make shorter work of this. And so that's going to only bolster our user experience in our products, is being able to allow this natural language interaction with all of our workloads. I think reporting is also something that is extremely powerful with large language models and AI in general. We obviously have Veeam One. We've got a number of reports that are baked into various workloads. But being able to customize those, again, through natural language and through AI, I might want all of my information in tabular form, yet some of our reports are in graphs and tables and text. I might be a Japanese customer and I want it to be in Japanese. Being able to customize it based on my requirements and have it understand what I want, and to drop all the information that I don't want out of it and be a very concise report. Maybe I want to send, I might be an IT manager, a CIO, and I want a very technical report to send to my team, yet I need a untechnical report to take to the board on our security posture. And through natural language, we could have it generate that same report to both parties, and no one's had to kind of lift a finger. I think that is going to be extremely powerful going forward. And then something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, I've played with a lot, is how could we improve search? We know when we go to restore data, what exists where. Certainly working at a CSP, we had it all the time. A customer would come to us and go, I need to restore that Excel sheet that was definitely correct yesterday. And we go to restore it and it's not even there. It was actually created 3 or 4 days ago, and the person actually deleted it, a week before or whatever. And so that's one example. But the other example is actually finding the data in a smarter way. So we can leverage things like keyword search, but also kind of this more AI-powered search, the semantic meaning behind my question. Because as humans, we're not always going to get the information right. We might mean water, but the word is aqua or waterfall. All of these are kind of related words in the semantic kind of vector world. And right. So being able to match actual keywords, things like purchase order numbers, people's names, with kind of this related semantic reasoning, we can blend the two search results together and actually provide more meaningful search results, which I think is great. It's going to reduce the number of things like e-discovery. It's going to speed up that process. And so that's going to help people find more accurate data faster. And there's a lot of really good research out there at the moment. A lot of people working in this space, people like Microsoft, any of the kind of Elastic, all the vector database kind of either SaaS-based companies or even open source ones. They're all trying to blend in this hybrid search world, and so I'm really excited to see how we take that forward in our products with hybrid search. Yeah, so that's kind of the three pillars. To recap, it's kind of threat intelligence, data resilience, and kind of operator experience or kind of user experience. That's kind of how we think about it at a high level within Veeam. And there's obviously some other things around security and scalability and things, which we'll talk about, no doubt.
Yeah, well, it's interesting too as you talk about those three pillars. Two of the three are so behind the scenes that they're just happening. When it really comes down, it's just the third one that is, I'll say the demoable one. But there's so many cool things in it. When you're talking about the data exfil, I'm sitting there thinking exactly what you started saying, and things like, okay, use the intelligence to say we're sensing this, send the alert to the firewall or to the web filter or whatever to shut down that conversation. There's so many like instead of sending an alert that then a human has to interact on, you start combining intelligences, the intelligence of the network systems to the backup systems to the data storage systems, and all of a sudden now you're protecting your data at a layer never seen before because these systems aren't siloed anymore because they're smart enough to essentially speak the same language, which they've never done before.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's it. Once we break down the silos, anything's possible. Bringing in, if we look at a data set, any data set in isolation, it's always going to be biased. If we start looking at more workloads, more information, the more information these systems have and can act on, the more powerful it's going to be and the more accurate it's going to be.
Yeah. And it's funny you were talking about and queries and reporting. And that's one area everybody struggles with. It's like, I can tell you what I want to see, but I don't know where to go click to get it. As soon as that barrier is broken, I'll bet you talk about access to data at that point. It's all in there. All the data is there, but it's finding it. And then just to be able to, I saw a demo of the changes for that one at the Veeam 100 Summit in Berlin of exactly what you're saying with change this to a tab format from a graphical format, and just what the ability was to do it was pretty amazing.
Yeah, exactly, and it's
yeah.
in line too, right? Like it's instant. We don't need to engage data warehouse people to pull in more information or generate these reports, etc. This information is readily available. The LLMs are very good at understanding the information and getting even better, and actually showing how they arrived at those results. And so, if you can have someone like that example that I use, they might want to generate 2 reports, and very quickly they didn't have to engage anyone. They're using the same data set, and just through a chat interface, they can get it to generate exactly what they're after. I think reporting is low hanging fruit. I think everyone is in the industry. Every company's trying to work out what does that look like. Not
but
just
it'd be
from
so impactful. From a development
it
standpoint, it's the low hanging fruit, but from the impact on the end user, it's huge.
It is, yeah, and it's impactful in 2 ways, right? Like it costs organizations a lot of money to have data warehouse experts, systems that generate reports or make it easy for sort of self-service reporting engines. All these exist, and so our job is to make sure that we deliver kind of meaningful systems to our users, our partners, in our kind of product set. And again, I think it's really important. Like Jorge and his team have done a great job at bringing like Veeam Intelligence into Veeam One. Obviously, we're collecting a lot of signals from a lot of our workloads in there today. That system, Veeam One, has come leaps and bounds since the first, second, third version of that. It's an amazing product now. And it's got access to so much information, not just Veeam workloads, that I think that's going to be very powerful to see where we end up with that in a year, 2 years' time, around what insights we're able to derive from that product alone.
Yeah, that was the demo that I remember being very exciting, just the capabilities. And it is funny that you say that, because I don't think a lot of people realize just the power of that tool. Like, I also, I work in the channel, so I'm constantly telling our partners, make sure you sell this, but just the information that's in there and the easier we can make that to access is just going to help that. And again, that's just with the human to computer interface. Now imagine what we could do in the background. So you could start correlating problems with this system to that system, and have it thinking through those things and offering remediations or just doing them depending on how you set things up. It's all pretty amazing what can be done. Come a long way since, and we've only really been doing a lot of this, I guess, in the last full version. So I guess it's coming up on 2 years, because V12 was released on Valentine's Day 2 years ago. But it's really been since that version that we've really been doing it. So it's only 2 years. It started with the most basic that everybody has, using ChatGPT essentially to do the how do I set up a backup, not just do it. And I think that's the amazing thing when it gets it. I also help to train a lot of people for their VMCE. And it's like, I teach people how to do a backup, to be able to just think somebody's going to be able to go, can you set up a backup for all my Linux VMs that are based in this data center, and set it to start at 10 o'clock every night and run differential, run periodically every 3 hours throughout the day. Just be able to say that and go, here you go.
That's
power.
right. And I think the other thing that we're seeing a lot more of are these agents, these AI assistants, particularly for web-based workloads, things like Veeam Data Cloud or even Veeam One. And as we move into the future, obviously V13 of VBR, and we move into that world, it's that example you just used is great. I mean, I think it's really powerful to be able to, with natural language, just describe what you want and for it to happen. But also that training aspect, like how do I create a policy, or how do I adjust the immutability settings on this repository and actually have true guided interaction? Like how do I adjust the mutability period on that, and it goes great. Well, you click on the inventory button and it kind of highlights it in the interface, and we have this interaction between the user interface and this AI assistant to then help guide the user in real time as they move through our applications, to then get them to the point that they're now trained on that. They now know how to adjust that setting themselves. They understand why that's there. And we can also then provide contextual information around the setting. We might want to provide some guidance around, well, you're not going to want to set if you're worried about storage costs, 900 days of immutability is a terrible idea, because that's going to be immutable on there. Things like that. We can start offering, actual proper information around why that setting's there, what some smart defaults are, etc. I think that's really interesting once we start seeing that interaction in the browser. And there's a lot of frameworks that already exist for that, and I know that we're working hard on looking at how we can get that into our applications to help drive that forward for our customers.
Yeah, it really is exciting. And it's interesting too, because as I was saying when we started, that it seems like every book you read, the same chapter can be excited about the future of AI and then scared of it. And it usually comes down to two things that make people scared of it. And that's security and the ethics of it. And anybody who's doing anything with this needs to come up with a policy on how they're doing it. And what does Veeam's policy on those topics look like?
Yeah, so we do have like a responsible AI charter that we've published. But really it boils down to, Veeam as a company, we have obviously security and ethics policies, and our AI development efforts, etc., all align with that. And there's kind of three pillars. We've got a core focus on ethical AI, and what I mean by that is, we're really committed to kind of harnessing AI to strengthen data resiliency and protection. But all of those efforts have to align with our own values and our own ethical standards. We can't kind of deviate that just because AI is the new shiny thing, and we'll kind of ignore what's happening on the side. So all of our efforts in AI to date kind of have very much strong alignment up to our sort of company values, our company ethical standards, etc. The second pillar is probably things like transparency and explainability. I think, we've talked about, lots of people have talked about these AI systems that hallucinate. How do I know that's the right answer? And so when we think about our chatbots, we want to prove, how we got to the answer. What was the decision-making process to get to there? What sources did it use? What was its thought process? We've seen a lot of these newer models that are kind of the chain of thought showing how it's thinking about things. So we want to make sure that our system will show references, for example. We want to show that this is how it arrived. It used these three pieces of information. This is how the LLM thought about those pieces of information, and this is why, and this is the answer it gave. So making sure that it's explainable around how they got to that answer is very important. And much like we're doing today, we want to have an open dialogue. We want to make sure that we're transparent as an organization around where we use AI, what its purpose is, what its capabilities are, and what it's not. I think that's very important from an organizational standpoint for us to be very transparent around where data goes, etc. And then
That's a big
obviously
one right now,
Hey,
especially with what was that? Is it DeepSeek that just has hit the market and
yeah,
everybody's excited about, and then all of a sudden realized, about where data is going and again
yeah.
with
The funny
the
thing is, I
yeah
mean, it's always hard on particularly social media platforms. You'll see, probably a lot of VC funded American startups in that space kind of throwing some FUD there. And it's
yeah
definitely not all FUD, but all major providers are collecting telemetry, right? Like, particularly, I like, the old saying of like, if it's free, then you are the product kind of thing.
yes
They're collecting telemetry, right? They want to know how to improve their products.
yeah
And DeepSeek are no different. I think, there's obviously some geopolitical things at play and other bits and pieces, but it obviously wasn't great that they had an open ClickHouse database and that was leaked. So maybe it was a bit rushed to market, potentially, or someone just forgot to close a loophole, or maybe they don't have the same security standards as other providers out there. But yeah, certainly being transparent from our perspective and making sure that we are telling our customers where AI is and isn't, and also that it can be turned off. I think a lot
yes
of people don't realize that you can just disable it. You don't have to have Veeam AI assistance. You can just completely disable it, and then you can also choose the level that you want, and we'll continue that throughout the products. So if you don't want to use AI, you're worried about it, maybe you're under certain regulatory standards, then you'll always be able to turn it off. But for those that do want to leverage it and are comfortable with it, are allowed to use it, then we'll enable that. And then, it's not unrealistic to expect that maybe like a bring your own model type of thing. We've seen even our one is powered by our own private Veeam instance hosted in Azure, for example. It's not using the public one that they can then, it's got slightly different terms of service around data reuse, etc. It's a private instance. So maybe for those that want to run their own particular model, we allow a bring your own model in the future, or at least bring a known endpoint, like bring your own private Azure instance, because then we can be a little bit more in control of the quality of the responses, because we need to make sure that the quality is still there as well. So that's a really tricky one to tackle, but I think it's important. Which kind of leads nicely into kind of the third pillar, which is like the data privacy and also the minimal use thing. I think is really important. So from a data privacy perspective, we want to make sure we're not just in America, we're not just in New Zealand, we're not just in Japan or Europe. We have a large customer base across the globe, and so the team need to really think about how this is integrated and making sure that it adheres to all the global regulatory standards around privacy and things and security protocols. So that's really difficult to achieve, but that's what the team has to consider every time they decide to spin up a feature or enhance something. They need to think, okay, how's that going to impact GDPR or whatever it might be across the globe? And it's very, very difficult, but that's something that's always top of mind, is that data protection side of things. And then the minimal data use, I think, is extremely valuable. We're only going to use the necessary data to kind of get to the answer. We're not going to go and collect all that information, send it to the LLM, or store it if we don't need it. And it's all about reducing that. And where we do need to collect data and store it, it's all anonymized. So again, we're not just storing things where we need to, but if we do need to store data at any point in the future, then the goal is to always anonymize anything that might be in anything, so that if there was a data leak or whatever, then it is anonymized data. But yeah, that's kind of how we think about building these systems here that align with our ethics and our things at Veeam at a high level, at a global organizational level. They all align with each other.
That's amazing, because that is way more thought pre-thought that has to go into developing these compared to any other product we've ever developed or feature we've ever developed. Um, it's not often that you come across backup software where you have a conversation around. It's not a matter of if we can, it's a matter of if we should, and if it fits in the ethics framework of the company. Usually it's, oh, this data needs backed up, we're going to back it up, and we write a module for it, and we back it up. But this is a whole different way of approaching developing a product, and it's something that it's kind of amazing when you think of all that has to go into it, how fast everything is advancing in this world as well.
Yeah, that's the tricky the tricky piece is it is advancing. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we were all wowed at ChatGPT that came out, and you look at how fast just the foundational model space changed in a very short period of time. You had a lot of competitors come into the market. Even look what's happened in that short period of time, like Elon Musk's Grok didn't even exist, and now he's directly competing and going after OpenAI because he doesn't agree with them not being open anymore. Even look what's happened with OpenAI. They were open, and maybe now they're not open, and and then you've got other markets too. The Chinese are making some fantastic models, not just from an LLM perspective, but these video models, these vision models that are now being able to generate things that now compete with kind of the best of breed from a couple of years ago. So that foundational model space is changing rapidly. And then you look at how we've gone from a basic conversational kind of chatbot with kind of some memory to now we're talking about full agentic systems where we can create a tool of a group of agents that all have different capabilities and different personas and different things that they are experts in. We can give them some tools. We can give them a calculator, an API, a search engine, access to a knowledge base through a vector database. We can give them these tools, and then we can feed in a query at the top, and then the agentic system will then work out, well, okay, who do I need to talk to achieve that goal? And then they can also reason with themselves. Have I achieved that task? Yes, I have. Give it back to the user. And so that's fundamentally what is at the heart of Veeam Intelligence, is the start of an agentic system. Particularly when you're talking about multi-workloads, we might have to have an AI agent that can talk with Veeam 1 and VBN 365 and VBR at a very basic level. They're more granular than that, but that's kind of what you need to start thinking about, because if I'm a user asking a query and it's a report generation query, and I want to gather all protection information across all of my workloads, that might be the query. The agentic system is going to need to know where your data lives, and it's going to need to be able to connect into all those different workloads to pull that information. Or maybe it'll surface it through Veeam 1. That's the power of agents and AI, and where we'll end up as these agentic systems. But yeah, at the core of VI today, that is what's there. There's just a few agents and a few tools. We'll see this grow to lots of agents and lots of tools as we build it out, and the capabilities of Veeam Intelligence kind of grows.
And it's amazing because you're talking about, having to find the data. It's no more is it going to be pointing at the data sources. They're going to be intelligent enough to go find those data sources themselves. Like you said, even within our environment, you ask VBR something, or it needs to know something, it's going to learn that it should go talk to Veeam 1, or does it have the information itself, or do I need to talk to orchestrator, to something online, to something outside the system? It's just kind of amazing how it's just all going. I know my head explodes when I start thinking about it, and I've been trying to read about a lot of these things, not just Veeam, but in general, some books and everything. And it was funny because I was talking to Rick Vanover last year after these sessions, and we both kind of looked at each other like, wow. And we both said, I feel like with this, the more we read and educate ourselves, the less we know. And it's one of those things that everybody wants to know more. How's the best way to learn more about in general, and then also how to better utilize the Veeam Intelligence tools that the end user interfaces with, and even just making sure that they're using what's within the product correctly. So 2 questions there, I guess. One, if somebody wanted to go educate themselves about the state of AI today, where would you point them? And then 2, what do we have out there that can help people to best use these capabilities that are in our products?
Yeah. So I think it's going to depend on who you are. Like, obviously, I come from a software engineering background, so I'm going to naturally dive into like tinkering at a code level and
Mm-hmm.
learning things. So for those type people, I mean, there are literally hundreds of resources, courses. Deeplearning.ai is a great resource. NVIDIA's got a bunch of courses to kind of kick the tires, like step through learning, to kind of get involved with AI and understand the kind of core foundational knowledge. Like, what is an LLM? What do I ask it? How does it interact? If I pass the context here, what is a context window, etc. Things like vector databases. What role do they have to play? What even are they? How do I use them? How many are they? Are there SaaS ones? Can I run it in Docker? All those things comes from just playing, and that's how I've kind of come to learn about it, is just through code. But not everyone can code, and not everyone has a desire to code. And obviously, that's a steep learning curve. If you're on ramps, you got to learn
That's where
Python or
I'm at,
something.
and it's first time in a lot of years that I wish I had more of a coding background, but I
Right.
don't, and I don't have the
So
time to
that's
get deep into it.
yeah. So that's where things like low code platform comes in. Things like N8N. There's a number of them out there now that allow effectively these building blocks, these drag and drop type experiences where you could drag in a trigger, which might be when I click the button, or when I receive an email, or when a webhook calls from a different system. You name it, you can kind of set your trigger point, or just manually. You can just come in and click the button, or enter a prompt. And then you can just try to chain these things together. Like, when this happens, then this happens. You can drag in, for example, a chatbot. And they've built a lot of the building blocks out with popular LLM platforms. So OpenAI, for example, go and spin up an account there, chuck $5 worth of credit in it, drag that into your system, and then you could then have the basics of an agent system. And then you can kind of grow from that. You go, well, it would be really neat if I could then take that prompt and then generate an image out the other side. And then you might have an image generation thing. Like, well, that's cool. Now I've generated an image, but I want to post it to my social media account. So then you can drag the X connector in and connect it to your X account. And then all of a sudden you've got potentially a little quite simple AI system where you've entered a prompt like, I want to submit a post about this podcast, and I want you to generate an image. And your prompt to the LLM might be, generate a catchy hook for this podcast. This is the topic. And then also generate an image prompt. And then you can have multiple streams that goes off the side. One that'll generate the sexy hook, one that'll generate the prompt, go through the image generation and generate the image. And you've got both outputs that then converge at the end there, and you submit it to Twitter. And there's a basic little drag and drop thing that you could probably build in 20 minutes. And I think that's a really great way for people to understand who want to tinker. But not all people want to tinker either. Some people just aren't that persona at all. They might be the CIO of a company, but they want to understand a bigger foundational knowledge. What are people doing in the security and privacy space? So everyone's going to be different around what they're after. But I would say in any case, follow experts that make sense. Like Andrew Ng, he is a massive brain in this space. He's very good at so it's Andrew NG. If you Google YouTube or anything on him, he's just about on every AI podcast. He's at Y Combinator, who actually have a really good AI kind of workshop series late last year that I watched. A lot of really good speakers, and from different views, coding to kind of the ethics side of things. So just consume as much content as you can, and don't be biased. Like, don't just go follow one person, because you're going to get a biased view of systems, etc. in that space.
True with anything that you're doing. I don't care what your topic is. Yeah, don't just follow one person, because it's a way to limit your learning anyway.
Exactly. And yeah, try and fail. Like, it's a bit like anything. You start and you're not going to be very good at it, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but just iterate. Like, keep moving through it, keep punching through it, and just keep trying, and you'll get there. And failing that, like, interact with the community. There are so many people willing to share knowledge, what they've learned. Reddit's a great source. There's some great kind of subreddits on there that'll give you information. Read through what tools they're using, what platforms, what they're thinking about in their systems, their organizations, where they've seen good use cases for AI, where they haven't. Learn from the community. It's a great source of information.
And it does, you brought up a great point. It does seem like a community that really wants to share what they know, which I think is just makes sense, because that's kind of the concept of what all this intelligence and these models and everything are anyway. Because if you're not sharing that information, your platform's not going to be able to grow. So you hope it gets reciprocated. It's really the future, I think, is very exciting for this stuff, and especially for what we have here at Veeam. I mean, what we covered today is so much, and we're just scratching the surface here as far as what's coming and what we're going to be able to do.
Yeah,
It's
we
kind of
really
amazing.
are. I mean, like you say, we're at the phase that a lot of organizations are at. It's the user experience, it's that chat experience, it's the support assistance, because that gives a lot of people a lot of pain points. They want that immediate response. So being able to pull in KB articles and other bits and pieces, that's great. But I'm particularly excited for where we are in 12 to 18 months or more into the future. It's going to be a vastly different landscape, not just here at Veeam, but like across all platforms. And yeah, like I said, right back at the start, I think hopefully we're not talking about, it's a bit like when the digital camera came out, like
Yeah.
when does a digital camera stop being called a digital camera and it's just a camera?
Yeah.
Hopefully we're just not talking about AI, and we're not trying to AI wash everything, and it's just baked into our products, and it's just intuitive, and all of a sudden it's a delight to use, and we can extract more value out of the information and the data that we hold in the systems. I think that's going to be a lovely place to be. When we get there, obviously it's a long road, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, so to speak, between now and then. But that's where we're heading, and you can tell I'm definitely the glass half full kind of person when it comes to AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I
great.
think you have to be. So I not only just you, but I think everybody. I mean, yeah, there's obviously things to be concerned about, but I mean, ultimately, we've been spending how many decades collecting all this data? It's time to do something useful with it. When you look at
Yeah,
what's out, just doing a basic Google search, the information that's out there that we, think of what we're not seeing when we do those returns. I mean, Google does a great job, but just think of what we could learn from
yeah,
getting excerpts of that or getting combined information. And again, has to learn what's right, what's wrong. There's so many things that we can do. And I think it's exciting what we've started. I appreciate you taking the time to share what Veeam's been doing. It's just fascinating to see what's happened. Like you said, in such a short amount of time. Like I said, we're talking about 2 years of us really being, getting going with just even the basics to get where we are now. We'll keep having these conversations and see where we are and what the next big leaps are. I'm excited to see. I'm sure there's going to be some things at VeeamON coming up that we'll be able to see as well that are going to demo some of
yeah.
the stuff. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. There'll be a lot of talk tracks about AI, and even where we're using it, how we're using it, what's in the products today. There'll almost certainly be a lot of discussions around that and Veeam Intelligence, but then we also need to think about Veeam Data Cloud and our kind of BAS focus there, and where and how do we put AI into that. It's going to start with that assistance piece, but then those teams are collaborating in the background, so they're leveraging a lot of these same agentic systems, these same search tools, etc. The same security. We're able to learn from each other. Those teams are able to learn from each other, and hopefully soon we start seeing kind of a broader just system. We think about it as a singular system, that Veeam Intelligence at the and we can start leveraging signals and data and information from our BAS protected workloads with our on-premise, and we can start kind of interacting with all of our workloads. Like I said before, I think that's the key is allowing these systems to talk to all the workloads no matter where they are. I think we shouldn't think them as silos, because that's where we're going to unlock true value, true insights, not just from what's happening day to day on my workload, but oh, hey, I want to go find an email or some information relating to this project. Okay, well, that could be in a bunch of email repositories. That could be in a bunch of file shares of an unstructured data backup. That could also be on some virtual machine backups or some things sitting out in Azure. And so how can we find that? How can we surface that information to our customers in a meaningful way, leveraging AI tooling? And I think that's a pretty cool place to be if we manage to crack that. Not saying it's easy.
No, nothing worth doing ever is. So that's,
No.
I think it's a great goal to go towards. And I see that we are definitely on a great path for it. I appreciate you spending the time today to share all this with me and with the listeners. Cause this is, again, this is the future of what we're doing. That it's what's going on in the world, but it's the future of what Veeam is doing to bring a better experience for all our customers and to help our partners to get out there and bring the next level of solutions to our customers. So
Yeah,
thank you. I
absolute pleasure.
appreciate it.
And I'll say, like, any partners or customers who end up listening to this, you know, no idea is a bad idea. So like we're all for feedback. Like, reach out to me, any of the team, any of your local reps. Like, I know for a fact, like that these teams that are developing these systems, our CTO, etc., they want to hear the feedback from the field. Like, what's resonating? What have they seen out in another system that works really well, and how could that apply to their experience with Veeam? So yeah, call out to anyone that's got any desire for us to build something. Obviously, no promises on building it, but we want to hear as much from our customers as possible. So reach out anytime.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again. And yep, well, I'll get with you at some point in the future and we'll see where we are. I hope to see, will you be coming to Veeam? Do you know?
Yeah, I'll be at Veeam, so I've got a few
Awesome.
sessions there. I've got an AI workshop actually for whoever that's going. We're running like a workshop before the event. So we'll kind of teach some foundational knowledge around like how you can get started with AI.
Cool.
And we'll cover a little bit in a bit more detail around what Veeam Intelligence is, but largely it's the outcome for that is we want people to go away with some knowledge and experience. We'll run through some code that'll already be pre-developed, and we'll learn about vector databases and LLMs, and hopefully we'll build a chatbot or something out the end of it with some Veeam data or an API or something. It'll be very basic, but hopefully it'll give people some foundational knowledge of AI and AI systems. So if anyone wants to come to that, but otherwise, yeah, I'll be hanging around all week, doing some demos and other kind of engagements. So yeah, if you see
Awesome.
me, come say hello.
Well, I will see you there. I'm looking forward to it. And again, thank you.
Pleasure. Anytime.
This has been Veeam Partner Perspectives with Eric Doherty. Thank you for listening.